Okay, so the problem says, now you got to look at it. I'm not going to write it down because there are too many words. But it says the sum of 6, comma, twice a number, comma, -2, comma, and 4 times a number. All right, so you want to add those things up. All right, so basically what you should have done first was write out as you read it. So the sum of 6 plus twice a number means what?
2x.
2x plus a -2 plus 4 times a number means what? 4x. So that's what you should have written out. But in the parentheses, it said you had to do what to this? Simplify your answer. So which meant you had to combine like terms in this case. So simplify in this context means to combine like terms. So if you look at your variables, 2x and 4x, when I combine those, what do I end up with? 6x. A +6 and a -2, when I combine those, is what? +4. So there's your answer, 6x plus 4. Okay? All right, what was the other problem you had in this section?
The one, the one above it.
Number 5?
So it's just when I see those commas, I'm gonna be.
Well, comma means to pause. So the sum of 6, pause, and you're adding those. It says to add them. Twice a number, pause. Put a -2 down, pause, and then write down 4 times a number.
But see, when I seen the commas, I was just putting in the parentheses.
Comma does not mean parentheses. Nowhere in the notes, if you go back to the notes or if you go back to the videos, nowhere did we say comma means parentheses. Okay? Nowhere did we mention that. Comma, we mentioned, means to pause. Okay? All right. All right, number 5, twice a number, comma. So that means look at twice number first. What is twice a number? 2x. All right, then it says you're going to minus. What does minus mean? Subtract. All right, now this is where we talked about you had to be careful. You're subtracting the sum, and sum means to do what? Add. You're subtracting 2 things, and what am I subtracting? The number and 6, right? I'm subtracting the sum of the number 6. Now, this is where some of you were probably going to mess up if you weren't careful. So it's not x plus 6 like this. That means you're subtracting x and then adding what? 6. What do I need there if I'm subtracting the sum? Parentheses. Okay, that's what you needed. All right, and so when you distribute, you got to wear the parentheses now. So when you distribute, what is this number right here understood to be? Okay, so you're distributing what number though? -1. And so I get 2x. What's a -1 times x? What's a -1 times 6? All right, so then it says simplify your answer. So what do I get? X minus 6. Okay, 2x minus x is x, and then you're left with -6. All right, so in that problem, we talked about this in a previous lesson. We looked at an example like that. So twice numbers subtract or minus the sum. So in that case, you had to put that in parentheses. So you're subtracting those 2 things. You're not just subtracting x, you're subtracting x plus 6. So that had to be put in parentheses. Okay, anything else? From 8.7, you have 4 worksheets there. Anything? Okay. All right, so you have the key. Make sure you look at the key. And also make sure on your test that when you see something like this and I ask you to simplify this, and it says to show the work, this is what I'm looking for. Is that clear? I mentioned that even before I gave you this worksheet out. I said this is what I'm looking for in these blanks. Remember that? So hopefully you went back to the notes before you started this worksheet and looked to see what it is I wanted, because that's what I wanted. Okay? So you're going to have a couple like these on your tests. So make sure you show the work. This is what I want when I say show work. Okay? All right, so those are easy points to get. Just don't be lazy and not show what I want. You want all those points that you can get. All right. So just be aware of what I want in terms of this with regards to your test, because you're going to have about 2 problems like that. Okay, so then we were talking about solving equations, remember? All right, now remember, you want as many points as you want to get, correct? Okay, so the directions will say show work as presented in class or the videos. So make sure if you want all the points, you do it as I asked you to. All right, so I'm looking for your form. I'm looking for what it is you're doing based on what we did in class. Okay, I don't want any shortcuts. No shortcuts here. You do the work as presented in class. Okay? Now, when you get into college algebra, you can skip some of these things, but in here you can't do that. You got to show the work as presented in class. That's why we're going over these sections. All right, so here's what I mean. All right, so let's look at this example. So this is going to be number on page So again, this is on your test that we're about to look at. So this is going to be number 14 on page 630. Number 14. Okay, 14. And here's 14. You have 3n plus 2n equals 7 plus 4n. All right? Okay, so you have this linear equation. And all the equations you have here will be linear. So at some point, even when we get into the more difficult ones in a later section, at some point the idea is to bring the variables to one side, constants to the other. Okay? Now remember, you're looking for as many points as I can give you. And that's based on how you show the work. Okay? So the way I do this is the way I want you to show it so you can get all your points. All right, now, in some of the problems we're going to do, there are going to be parentheses involved. Okay? In this case, do you see any parentheses? No. All right, so here are going to be the steps you're going to do. So for this section and the next section, these are going to be the steps. All right, step 1 to solving this linear equation. Use a distributive property if you have parentheses. Okay, so if I can use a distributive property, that's the first thing I want to do. Now, you use a distributive property when you have what in that expression? Parentheses. I don't have any here. Okay, but if I did, that's the first thing I would do. Second step, once you do the distributive property, then chances are, not always the case, but chances are you're going to combine like terms next. So the next step is to combine like terms if possible. Okay, combine like terms. All right. And then the third step after that is to use the addition property of equality. We talked about that in a previous lesson, the addition property of equality. Now, the addition property of equality will help us to get the variable by itself. Remember, we're trying to get the variable by itself. Now, once we do the addition property of equality, you're going to see what else is going to happen. So that combined like terms that we just wrote, you're going to use it throughout. The combined like terms will be used throughout. Okay, but the first thing you're going to do is get rid of the parentheses if you can. Then you're going to combine like terms once you get rid of the parentheses. Then you're going to use the addition property of equality. Combine like terms again through the process. All over the place, you're going to be combining like terms. And at the end, you're going to use a multiplication property last. Multiplication property, multiplication property of equality. You can do that last. And then at that point, you got the variable by itself. So watch how this is going to apply here. Okay, so I don't have to do step 1. Why don't I need to do step 1? No parentheses. But can I combine like terms at this point? Yes, on which side? The left. 3n plus 2n is 5n. So I get 5n equals 7 plus 4n. So that was the first step. So what I did here to get to this point right here, and on the test, you don't have to write out those words I'm writing, but this is what you did. You combine like terms. That's how you got to this step. Combine like terms. All right, now notice I have variable on both sides, correct? But only constant on one side. Variable on both sides, only constant on one side. Okay, so we talked about the addition, the multiplication property. Remember that? So it does not matter which side you bring the variable on. Does not matter. But since the constant, remember the constant, what's the constant here? 7. The constant is the term without the variable. Since the constant appears only once and it appears on the right-hand side, let's bring the variables to the left. So that means I want to get rid of this plus 4n, right? What's the opposite? We were talking about opposite previously. What's the opposite of adding 4n? All right, now remember, you want to get as many points as you can get, correct? So you must show that you are using what property I'm about to use. The addition property of equality. So you need to show me that you are subtracting 4n from both sides. That's how it's supposed to look. Subtract 4n from the left and subtract 4n from the right. Notice you're subtracting 4n once on each side, right? Okay, once on each side. That's mathematically correct what I wrote. It's like a balance. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Now, the next step, if you recall from a previous lesson, is to combine like terms. That's the next step. Don't do the multiplication property just yet. The next step is to combine like terms. So once you're going to notice that every time you use the addition property of equality, the next step is to combine like terms. Every time you use the addition property of equality, the next step is to combine like terms. And I can here, because what's 5n minus 4n? N equal. What's 4n and a negative 4n? 0. Okay? 0. And then what's 7 plus 0? 7. And then I want you to notice something. Do I need to do step 4? No. I don't have to do step 4 because what do you notice about n? It's already by itself and it has what coefficient? 1. All right, so there's your solution. So what we found is our solution. All right, so notice I combine like terms first. And then once I combine like terms, I use what property here? What was this property that I just used? The addition property of equality. And once I use the addition property of equality, how did I go from this to this? What did I do? Combine like terms. And I did not have to use step 4. I did not have to use the multiplication property of equality because the coefficient of n was already 1. Coefficient of n was already 1. Okay? So, let's look at this example. I'm going to write this as an example for right now. Oh, and you can always check your answer. Now, if this is a fraction as your solution, you can still check it. I would check it using a calculator. But 7 is a nice integer, so let's just go ahead and check it. Now, in the test, you're not going to have time to check. So I'm not going to ask you to check your solutions on a test or a worksheet. But I want to check to see if n equals 7 is actually a solution. So remember, one of the worksheets you had to do that, is you already picked that up, but you were asked to check and see if 7 was a solution, in this case 7. What did you do to check and see if 7 was a solution? Where did you go? To the original equation, and here's my original. And then wherever you saw the variable n, what did you substitute? 7. So wherever you saw the variable n, you substituted 7. So this was 3 times what? Plus 2 times what? And you want to see that's going to equal 7 plus 4 times what? 7. All right, order of operations. So look on the left side. I have multiplication and addition. What do I do first? All right, 3 times 7. 2 times 4, 7. And then I add, what do I get? Was that 36? 35, is that right? 35? Over here, I multiply before I add. What's 4 times 7? And what's 7 plus 28? 35. So they're equal. That means that 7 was correct. Okay? All right, let's look at this example. Suppose I had 2 times x minus 3 equal, let's say, 6. 2 times x minus 3 equal 6. All right. So what do I need to do first? Use a distributive property. Okay. So I'm going to distribute this 2. So when I distribute the 2, what's going to be the step you're going to show me on the test or the worksheet? Say it again.
2 times x and then 2 times 3.
Right. So what's going to be that thing you're going to write? 2x minus 6 equal 6, correct? Okay, so that's where we're at. So remember, to go from here to here, I use a distributive property. All right. Now, notice I have the variable on one side but constants on both, correct? All right. Now, the next step was to combine like terms. Can it combine like terms on any side? No. All right, so I don't have to do that part, combine like terms. The third step is to notice I have constants on both sides and variable on one side. In a little while, you're going to have variables on both sides. But either way, what property are you going to use next? Nope, 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 nope. Always use the addition property of equality first. Use a multiplication property of equality last. Use a multiplication property of equality last. So in other words, this coefficient of x, deal with that last. Deal with this coefficient last. So in other words, you want to deal with your constants at this point. Right now I'm subtracting 6. What's the opposite of subtracting 6? Adding 6. You're going to say plus 6 on each side. Now what allows me to say add 6 to both sides? Addition property of equality. All right, now a while ago we said every time you use the addition property of equality, what's going to be the next thing you're going to do? Combine like terms. So on the left side, on the left, what's a negative 6 and a positive 6? And what's 2x and 0? And what's 6 plus 6? All right, now what allowed me to go from addition property to 2x equal 12? How did I get to that point? Combine like terms. All right, and then compare that with number 14. Number 14, when I combine like terms, I did not use the multiplication property of equality because the coefficient of n was already 1. Here it's not. All right, so I got to see you using the multiplication property of equality. Don't go, because remember, you want to get as many points as you can. Now in college algebra, it's going to be a little bit different. You can skip some of these steps, but this is not college algebra. So you can go from here in college algebra and say x equal what? 6. But I need for you to show that you are using the multiplication property of equality. And how are you going to show that? Divide both sides by 2. Divide both sides by 2. I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite it over. This is what you're going to do. So that's the multiplication property of equality. And so 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times x is x equal 12 divided by 2 is 6. And all I did was simplify. That's how I got to this point. I just simplified. 2 divided by 2 is what? 1. That's simplification. 1 times x is x. 12 divided by 2 is 6. And so there's your solution. All right. And you can check this. 6 is a nice number to check. So let's just check x equals 6. So you go back to the original. Always go back to the original. That's where you must check, in the original. So wherever you see the variable x, what do I substitute? 6. So I get 2 times 6 minus 3 in parentheses, and I want to see that's equal to 6. All right, so on the left side, order of operations. What do I do first in terms of order of operations? Parentheses. What's 6 minus 3? 2 times 3 is what? Which is what this was. Okay? All right. Let's look at number, let's do 26. 26. And this is 26 on page 630. All right, 26, you have 4p minus 11 minus p equal 2 plus p minus 20. So 4p minus 11 minus p equal 2 plus p minus 20. All right, so on your test, what are you going to do first? Combine like terms. On the left side, on the left-hand side, what's 4p and a negative p? 3p. And so on the left side, what are you going to write right here? You're going to say 3p minus 11 equal, and on the right side, what do you write? All right, you can say negative 18 plus p, right? Or you can say what? Yeah, it's always easier if you tend to put the variable first. So p minus 18, is that right? Because I could combine the constants. 2 and a negative 20 is a what? Negative 18. All right, so remember what property what allowed me to go to this equation? Combine like terms. So that's what I did. All right, now this is where we're at. So notice I have variable on both sides, constants on the other. It does not matter which side I bring the variables on. It does not matter which side I bring them on. Or it does not matter which side I bring the constants on. And it does not matter which one I deal with first. Let's go ahead and deal with the variables first. Let's bring the variables to the same side. Do you want to bring the variables to the left or do you want to bring them to the right? It does not matter. You want to bring them to the left? Okay, now, all right. So that means, you see this p right here? I want to bring it to the left side. So is adding p going to help me? Mathematically, I can add p to both sides. Nothing wrong with that. But is it going to help me? No, because p plus p is what? 2p. I want that to be what number? 0. Remember, you want to cancel out. When you cancel out, you get what number? 0. That's why I asked you to put that 0 there. So subtracting p is going to help. All right, subtracting p is going to help me on both sides. All right, now what property allows me to say I can subtract p from each side? Addition property of equality. That's what I'm using now. Remember, once you do the addition property of equality, what are you always going to do next? Combine like terms. So what's 3p minus p? Minus what? Equal. And what's p minus p? And what's 0 and a negative 18? Negative 18. Okay? And how did I get to that point? I used what idea? Combine like terms. Remember, always do the multiplication property last. So that variable that I now have just on one side, you want to get rid of that 2 last. Get rid of that coefficient last. So that means you want to get rid of what next? Negative 11. So what's the opposite of subtracting 11? So what property am I still using? The addition property of equality. So you can say plus 11, plus 11. All right, so the addition property of equality. So remember, do one thing at a time. That's what I'm doing, one thing at a time. Now, once I do the addition property of equality, what comes next? Combine like terms. So what's a negative 11, a positive 11? And what's going to be on the left-hand side? What's going to be on the right-hand side? Negative 7, is that what you said? Okay. And so to get to that point, I combine like terms, right? Okay, one more step and you're done. Now I can get the variable p by itself. Right now, multiplying by what number? 2. Now remember, 2 is called the coefficient, right? Okay, the word coefficient. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 2? All right. So what will I do to both sides? Divide by 2. And what allowed me to divide by 2? Multiplication property of equality. And now I'm going to simplify. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then I cannot simplify negative 7 halves, so leave it as an improper fraction. You can write it as a mixed number if you want to, but leave it like that. It doesn't matter. So you can say p equals what? Negative 7 halves. Now, on my math lab, if it did say, write as a mixed number, do you remember how to write this as a mixed number? You say 2 into what? 7. 2 into 7 is how many times? 3 times 2. Subtract. So you subtract, you get a remainder of what, though? What's your remainder? 1. So this is 3 1/2, but it's really negative 3 1/2, right? All right. Okay, so that was number 26. Let's look at all right. Now, if you're really looking at number 26, I kind of wrote this term wrong, but it's fine. That should have been a 2p right here, and I wrote it as a what? A p. All right, it's no big deal. Okay, so I'm just going to put this as 26 star because I did write the term wrong. All right, let's look at this one now. Let's suppose we had, okay, so this is going to be number 26 on page 640. 26 on page 640. All right, here's 26. You have 4a plus 1 plus a minus 11 equals 0. That's what you have. So 4a plus 1 plus a minus 11 equals 0. You want to solve this equation. Remember, everything we deal with here and here, for the most part, can be linear equations or linear equality. So the idea is to get the variable on one side, constants on the other. All right, so if you want all your points, what should be the first thing you should do? Combine like terms. So 4a plus 1a is how many a's? 5a. 1 and a negative 11. Now, if you don't remember signed numbers, don't do this in your head. If you don't remember, use your calculator. So you're saying 1 plus a negative 11, right? And what's 1 plus a negative 11? Negative 10. So you're going to write this as 5a minus 10 equal 0. Okay, so that's where we're at. First, that's what I need to see. I need to see that. Now, the next thing I need to see is, what do you think is the next thing I need to see? The addition property equality. And so what is he going to write?
Plus 10.
Plus 10 on both sides. Yes. So right now I'm subtracting 10. What's the opposite of subtracting 10? Adding 10. Just like this. So once, remember, this is the addition property equality. Now, once you do the addition property equality, and remember, always do multiplication property last. You see this coefficient? What's my coefficient of A? 5. Always do that last. All right, addition property equality. Once you do the addition property equality, what's going to be the next step? Combine like terms. So negative 10 and a positive 10 is 0. 5a and 0 is 5a. 0 and 10 is 10. Okay, so that was combined like terms, right? Okay, now what's the next step? Multiplication property equality, and how are you going to show it?
5a divided by 5.
Divide both sides by 5. That's how you're going to show it, right? Okay, if you want all your points, you're going to show it, correct? All right. Now, in college algebra, you'll be able to skip that step. You don't have to show it. You can say, from that, you can say A equals what? 2. All right, but I need you to show it. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to say divide by 5, divide by 5. And now, remember, that's the multiplication property equality. Now, once you do multiplication property equality, the next step is to simplify. That's the next step. Now, here's what I mean by simplify. 5 divided by 5 is 1 times A is 10 divided by 5 is 2. And there's your solution. Okay, that's your solution. And you can, since that's an integer, let's go ahead and just check it real quick. Now, where do you check? In the original equation. So 4a plus 1 plus a minus 11 equal 0, correct? So 4 times a and what's a? Plus 1 plus a and what's a? Minus 11, and we'll see if that's all equal to what? 0. All right. What's 4 times 2? What's 8 plus 1? What's 9 plus 2? And what's 11 minus 11? And that's what you wanted. Okay? So all that was addition, right, except for multiplication. And so you do multiplication and the subtraction from left to right. Okay. All right, let's look at number, let's say 36. All right, so this is 36 on page 640. 36. You have your homework? That was due? Okay. All right, 36. You have 2 times 4x plus 1 equal negative 12 plus 6. So that's what it looks like. So according to our steps, what's the first thing you're going to do? Distributive property. Okay, do that first. Distributive property. So in other words, you're going to multiply everything inside this parentheses by 2. So what are you going to write? 8x plus 2, and just rewrite the other side. Just rewrite the other side for right now. Negative 12 plus 6, right? So the first thing you did was did what part? I'm going to write out what you did. You did what? Distributive property. That's what you used. Okay, now what's the next step? Combine like terms if you can. Can I combine like terms on either side? Yes, on which side? The right. So what's negative 12 plus 6? Okay, negative 6, correct? Now, to get to that point, I combine like terms. That's what I did. Now notice that only have variable on one side, constant on both. In the previous example, number 26 star, I had variables on both sides, constants on both. And so notice we had to use the addition property of equality. How many times in that case? Twice. Okay. Here, I'm only going to use the addition property of equality once. And you're going to see why. Okay, so always do which property last? Multiplication property, which means that you can divide both sides by 8 at the end, right? Which means you want to get rid of what first? The which one? What term? The 2, the constant 2. So what's the opposite of adding 2? Subtract 2. So if you want all your points on the test, you're going to subtract 2 just like this. Now you don't have to write out these things. In fact, you're not going to have time to, so don't write these words out. That's just for you to remember what we're doing here. So what property allowed me to do that? Addition property of equality. Now once you do the addition property of equality, what's always the next thing you're going to do? Combine like terms. So what's a 2 and a negative 2? What's 8x and 0? And what's a negative 6 and a negative 2? Very good, negative 8. So that was combined like terms, right? And then notice I only have one term on the left, one term on the right. Variable on the left, constant on the right. So now I'm going to use what property? Multiplication property of equality. And how will you show that? Divide both sides by 8. And now, so that was the multiplication, right? Now once you do the multiplication property of equality, you're going to simplify. You're going to simplify. So in other words, 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times x is x. Negative 8 divided by 8 is a negative 1. So there's your answer. That's your solution. All right, and that's all you do. That is all you have to do. So it's not a difficult process. Just make sure if you want all your points, you do one thing at a time, just like we're doing. Okay? One thing at a time. So this sometimes helps if you think about it like distributive property, then combine like terms, then addition property, then combine like terms, multiplication property, simplify. All right? Okay, so let's look at, let's do number, okay, so this is going to be number 30. Number 30. And that's going to be on page 630. So it's number 30 on page 630. All right, so here's what we have. We have 2 fifths x minus a 12th equals negative 3 fifths x minus 3 fourths. Okay? All right, so that's what I have. Say it again? Yeah, that's negative 1 over 12. Yeah. All right. So don't let the fractions throw you off. These fractions, in those two sections, these fractions are kind of easy to deal with. It's in the next section that we're going to do next week, but it's going to be on test 2 that you have to do something else with.
Those last two again as y on both of the three?
No, that's a 4. That's a 5 and a 4. All right. So what property do you think I'm going to use first?
LCD.
No. Okay. We haven't talked about LCD at all. Now, what you remember is you cleared your fractions, right? Okay, that's not until another section. It's easy. These problems are easy to where you don't have to clear your fractions. Because notice both variables have what denominator? 5. So leave it alone. Okay? So in another section, you're going to notice these variables are going to these terms are going to have different denominators. In that case, you want to clear your fraction. We haven't gotten to that part yet. So I still want you to use those steps, okay? Don't make it difficult, because if you try to clear the fraction the first test and you do it correctly and you write out the steps, you're fine. But if you do it incorrectly, you're losing all your points. Is that clear? All right. What's the first thing you're going to do? Say it again? Okay, so he said combine like terms. Can I combine like terms on either side? No. What's the next thing you're going to do? Addition, property of equality. That's what you're going to do. And let's go ahead and bring the variables on which side. Let's do the variables first. Deal with the variables first. You want to bring them to the left or the right? It does not matter.
Left.
The left? Okay. So, in other words, you want to get rid of those then, right? Now think, is adding or subtracting going to help?
Adding's gonna help.
Adding's going to help, because this is a negative, right? So you got to remember opposites. The opposite of a negative 3/5 is a what? Positive 3/5. Now you got to say 3/5 extra, though. Now what I do here, I have to do where? There. Okay? So you're going to add 3/5 extra to both sides. So that's the addition property of equality. Once you do the addition property of equality, what's the next step? Combine like terms. All right, now think. What is 2/5 plus 3/5? 2/5 plus 3/5. It's 1. It's really 5 over 5, right? Which is 1. That's why I said don't use the clearing fractions here, because the numbers are going to end up being nice. So 2/5 x plus 3/5 x is just what, though? X. All right. So I'm going to write everything else over. X minus 1/12 equals, and then when I combine these, that's 0. And what's 0 and a negative 3/4? Okay, so that's where I'm at. So again, to get to that point, I combine like terms. Now I still have to use what property still? The addition property of equality. So I got to get that x by itself, right? Right now I'm subtracting a 12th. What's the opposite? Adding a 12th to both sides. And so that's the addition property of equality. Once you do the addition property of equality, what's the next step? Combine like terms. What's a negative 1/12 and a positive 1/12? 0, because they're opposites, right? And remember in one of the previous sections, you had to turn in a worksheet that talked about opposites. So when you add two things that are opposite of each other, what's their sum? 0. And what's x and 0? All right. Now, if you don't remember anything about last semester in terms of adding fractions with unlike denominators, just use your calculator. You have access to a calculator. So in your calculator, you're going to say, now you got to remember that's what kind of 3/4? Negative 3/4. So you're going to say negative 3 divided by 4 plus what? 1 divided by 12, press equal, and you get this decimal, right? All right, now from last semester, hopefully you remember what 0.6666 repeating is. What fraction is that? 2/3. 2/3. If you didn't remember that, and it would be negative 2/3 in this case, if you didn't remember that, how do you get the fraction part of this? What do you press? Second PRB, and then press what? Equal? Negative 2/3. So what does x equal? Negative 2/3. All right. Now that was using a calculator. But let me remind you how to actually do it by hand. So I have this. I have negative 3/4 plus 1/12. Y'all agree? What's the least common denominator of 4 and 12? What's the smallest number that 4 and 12 go into evenly? Oh, no. 4. Now, 24 is a common. She said 24. 24 is a common denominator, right? But I asked for what, though? The least. What's the smallest number that 4 goes into and 12 goes into? All right.
4.
Okay. It cannot be 2 because 12 does not go into 2 evenly.
12 goes into 12.
All right. And it cannot be 4 because 12 does not go into 4 evenly.
12 goes into 12 one time.
Okay? So my question to you is this again. What do you think the least common denominator is? 12. That's the least common denominator. Your least common denominator has to be at least as big as the largest denominator you see. So if the largest denominator you see is what? 12. So your least common denominator has to be bigger than or equal to what? 12. All right. Now you see how some of you and you really, I'll be honest with you, when you get to college algebra, you really have to make sure you understand how to find the least common denominator, because you're gonna have denominators with variables in it in which you have to find the least common denominator. So if you have trouble with numbers, if you don't fix this, you're gonna have trouble with variables. Okay? All right, so the least common denominator is what here? 12. So you're going to write two fractions with 12 as your denominator. And then remember what you did was you said 4 times what is 12? What I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. What's negative 3 times 3? Negative 9. These denominators are 12, so that means the numerators have to be what? The same. And so what's negative 9 plus 1? And then if I reduce, what's negative 8/12 reduced? What do they have in common? Besides 2, what else? 4. Negative 8 divided by 4 is what? Negative 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3, and that's what this was. All right? Okay, so just make sure you don't rely, even though I said use your calculator if you don't remember, you really need to remember because you got to be able to do these with variables in 2 courses from now. Yes?
I get this part. I struggle with fractions. What about like the fraction say it's a negative 2/3 and then you distribute it over? That's why I kind of struggle.
We haven't done that yet. Okay? All right. Okay, let's look at this problem. This is number 36 on page 630. So you have negative 5 times x plus 1 plus 4 times 2x minus 3 equal 2 times x plus 2 minus 8. So negative 5 times x plus 1 plus 4 times 2x minus 3 equal 2 times x plus 2 minus 8. All right, you want to solve this equation. What's the first thing you're going to do? How many times are you going to use distributive property? 3. So you're going to distribute the negative 5, you're going to distribute the 4, and you're going to distribute the 2. So on your test, if you want all your points, what's going to be that next statement you're going to write? Tell me what to put down. Okay? Good? Yep. Yep. Equal? Very good. That's what you're going to write. Okay? What is the next thing you're going to do if you want to get all your points? All right. So on the left side, let's do the variables first. What's this coefficient right here that I'm underlining? Negative 5. What's this coefficient here? Positive 8. What's a negative 5 and a positive 8? 3. So what's a negative 5x and 8x? All right. So that's what you're going to write down, 3x. Now your constants. What are my constants? Negative 12. So what's a negative 5 and a negative 12? Negative 17. Equal. On the other side, combined like terms, what do you end up with? 2x minus 4. All right? And so all we did here was combine like terms. So that's how I got that. All right, now I have variable on one side, constant on the other, no fraction. So that's an easy thing to deal with. What side do you want to bring the variables on? The left? Okay. So that means you want to get rid of that 2x. Is adding or subtracting 2x going to help? Subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, right? See how I'm aligning my like terms? Because the next step is going to be to do what? Combine like terms. So what property did I just use, though? Addition property of equality. Now what's the next step? Combine like terms. So what's 3x minus 2x? 1x, oh, right? Or just x. And then minus 17 equal. What's 2x minus 2x? Now, what's going to be that term on the right side, though? What do I write? Negative 4, right? Negative 4. Okay, one more step and you're done, because what's the coefficient of x? 1. So am I going to be using the multiplication property of equality at all? No. So one more step and you're done. And what's that step that I'm going to use? Addition property of equality. So that means I'm going to do what to both sides? Add 17 to both sides. And then, so that's the addition property of equality. And so when I combine like terms, this is 0, so I get x equal, and what's negative 4 plus 17? 13. So there's your solution. All right, remember, what I did was to get to this point, I combined like terms. All right. Okay, now, this is where some of you are going to mess up if you're not careful. We had this on a worksheet, so I want you to think about this. Again, this is number 50 on the same page. Number 50 on the same page, and it looks like this. We have 15 minus, in parentheses, 6 minus 7k equals 2 plus 6k. All right, so that's where I'm at. What will I do first? Distributive property. Now, what are you going to distribute? What number are you distributing? Negative 1. Okay, good. Not 15, not negative 15, but negative 1, and here's why. Let me go ahead and just rewrite this over. Because remember, there's no number right here. It's understood to be a what? A 1. But you can distribute a what, though? Negative 1. Now, remember, some students make a mistake, and make sure you understand why. You don't say 15 minus 1 first and say that's a 14. Because remember your order of operations. This is subtraction, and this is what? Multiplication, right? Negative 1 times. According to your order of operations, do I multiply or subtract first? Multiply. So that's why you multiply first. That's why you distribute first. Okay, so don't say 15 minus 1. You got to distribute that negative 1 first. Because according to your order of operations, I do multiplication before I do subtraction. So if I do multiplication first, I'm going to get 15, and what do I write? Minus 6, and what else? Plus, right? Because a negative times a negative is a what? Positive. And then 2 plus 6k. All right, so that was the distributive property, correct? All right, now what do I do? Combine like terms. All right, on the left side, all I can combine are the constants. So it's 15 minus 6. 9 plus 7k, or you can say 7k plus what? Does not matter. Can I combine anything on the right? No, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite it. Okay, so that's where I'm at. So all I did at this point was I combined like terms. That's all I did. But again, notice I have variable on both sides, constant on the other. So how many times will I use the addition property of equality? Twice. Let's deal with the variables first. Do you want to bring the variables to the left or the right? The left. So that means you want to get rid of that plus 6k. What's the opposite of adding 6k? Subtract 6k. And I'm aligning my like terms because the next step is to combine them. So that was the addition property of equality. And now I'm going to combine like terms. What is 7k minus 6k? Just k. Now, how are you going to write the left side? 9 plus k? Okay, that's fine. Or you could have said what? K plus 9. Equal. On the right side, 6k minus 6k is 0, so what's left? All right, so that's where I'm at. Now, before I go any further, what is the coefficient of k?
1.
1. So am I going to be using the multiplication property? No. All I need to do is get rid of what term? The 9. So do I add or subtract? Subtract. All right, so I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And then, so let me see. So this, to get to this point, I combine like terms. And then the next thing was to the addition property equality again. And once you do the addition property equality, the next step is combine like terms again. Okay, what's 9 minus 9? That's what you want. And what's 0 plus k? And what's 2 minus 9? Negative 7. So there's your solution. Okay. All right, let's look at this one. All right, let's suppose we had, okay, this is number 60 on page 640. Number 60 on page 640. So it's not that difficult, but notice the steps, right? If you want your points, you can do those steps. All right, here's 60. 7 times 2x plus 1 equal 18x minus 19x. Okay, so what are you going to do first? Distribute. Okay, so in a distribute, what do I write? Equal, and then just rewrite the other side because you only want to do one thing at a time. So that was the distributive property. Now you're going to do what? And I can. On which side can I combine like terms? On the right side. So what's 18x minus 19x? Negative x or just negative 1x, right? Okay, so I have 14x plus 7 equals negative x. That's what I have. So to get to that point, I combine like terms. All right, now, tell me which side you want to bring the variables on. The right? Okay. And the reason they're saying the right is because the constant, there's only one constant term. Where's it located? On the left. It's located on the left. So it's quicker. It's quicker if you bring the variables to the right side. Now, it did not matter. I'll do it both ways to show you, but it did not matter. Now, if I'm going to bring the variables to the right side, that means I need to get rid of this 14x. How will I do that? Subtract 14x. Okay. All right. Now remember, that's the addition property equality. And now I'm going to combine like terms, right? What's 14x minus 14x?
0.
And what's 0 and 7? What's a negative x? Remember, negative x is the same thing as saying negative 1x. So what's a negative 1x and a negative 14x? Okay. So that was that was combining like terms. Now, what's the coefficient of x this time? Negative 15. So I am going to have to use what next? Multiplication property equality. So what do I do to both sides then? Divide by what? Negative 15. Good. And so that was the multiplication property equality. Now, once you do the multiplication property equality, what's always that word we use next? Once we divide by negative 15, the next step is to simplify. Negative 15 divided by negative 15 is 1. 1 times x is x. Now, can I simplify 7 divided by negative 15? No. So I'm just going to write as negative 7/15. So there's your answer. Now, it does not matter where you put the negative. But we tend, you see how we divide by negative 15? So the negative is in the denominator? You usually see your answer where the negative is in the numerator. So it does not matter where you put it. So you'll see it like this, though, negative 7/15. Sometimes you'll see it in front of 7/15. It does not matter. Is that clear? It does not matter how you write it. 7 divided by negative 15 is the same thing as saying negative 7 divided by 15 is the same thing as saying negative 7/15. Okay, all these mean the same thing. All right. Okay, let's look at number 44. 44. And that's on page 640. 640. All right, here's 44. We have 1/3 times 3x minus 1 equals negative 1/10 minus 2/10. All right. So don't let the fraction throw you off. You can deal with fractions. What will I use first? Distributive. So you're going to distribute a 1/3, correct? All right, so let's think about this. I have 1/3 times 3. You all agree? What is 1/3 times 3 the same as? 1. 3 over 3, which is what? 1. So the question then becomes, what is 1/3 times 3x? Is just x. Okay. What is 1/3 times a negative 1? All right, so when I distribute 1/3, this is the expression I ended up with. I got x minus 1/3, right? Okay, so do one thing at a time. Just rewrite the other side. So all I did at this point was use a distributive property. That's all I did, and I used it correctly. That's all I did. All right, now, what is the next step we talked about? Combine like terms. Which side am I going to combine like terms? On the right. Now, the good thing is that those fractions on the right had the same denominator. So what you got to think about is this. Then what is a negative 1 and a negative 2? Negative 3. So then I'm going to ask you, what will I write? What fraction will I write on the right side? Negative 3/10. And I'm just going to rewrite the left side over. So all I did was combine like terms. That's all I did here. Combine like terms. All right. And then one more step and you're done, because what's the coefficient of x? 1. Coefficient of x is 1. So all I need to do is use what property? The addition property of equality, right? And if I'm to use the addition property of equality, what will I add or subtract from both sides? I'm going to add 1/3. Because right now I'm doing what? Subtracting 1/3. So I'm going to add 1/3, just like this. So that's the addition property of equality. And now, once you do the addition property of equality, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Combine like terms. Now, be honest with you, simplify here means the same thing as combine like terms. All right, combine like terms. But let's just use the word combine like terms. Negative 1/3 and 1/3 is 0. Okay. X and 0 is x. Now, on your calculator, see those denominators are different? Use your calculator first. You have access to it. Negative 3 divided by 10 plus 1 divided by 3, right? And you get this decimal. There's no way you can look at this and tell me what that is, because it's not 0.333. It's 0.03333. So you use your calculator to write the fraction. So how do I deal with that? Second, PRB, then press equal, and it's 1/30th, right? So 1/30th. So there's your solution. So x is 1/30th. All right, now, just real quick, let's just kind of review how to do this from last semester. So on your test, you use your calculator, because you're not going to have time on your test to actually do what we're about to do. But from a previous course, what is the smallest number that 10 and 3 go into evenly? 30. Very good, 30. 10 goes into 30 and 3 goes into 30, and that's the smallest. Now, there's an infinite number of common denominators, like 60, 90, and so on, but the smallest is 30. So I'm going to write two fractions with 30 as the denominator. And now I'm writing equivalent fractions. 10 times what is 30? What I do to the denominator, I got to do to the numerator. So what's going to be the numerator? Very good. 3 times what is 30? What I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. 1 times 10 is 10. Now all I did was write equivalent fractions. Remember the word equivalent fractions from last semester? Equivalent fractions. So 3/10 is equivalent to what fraction? Negative 9/30ths. 1/3 is equivalent to what fraction? 10/30ths. And now since the denominators are the same, I just add their numerators. What's negative 9 plus 10? And so I got 1 over what? Which is what this was. Okay? All right. So we're going to do a few more problems with this Thursday, but your test covers that. Now you see what I wanted to test, right? Okay, so remember the steps. All right, don't be lazy and skip some steps. You're going to be very upset with me. You really need to be upset with yourself because you didn't follow directions. All right, so it's not that difficult. Now, I forgot to print out the worksheet on this. So I'm going to put it online tomorrow. You don't have to print it out. All you got to do, all I want you to do starting tomorrow before you get this Thursday is to start working the problems out on another sheet of paper. And then when you get the worksheet Thursday, you just transfer your work. Okay, you understand what I want? So I'm going to put this on Canvas tomorrow. The worksheet going with this on Canvas tomorrow. Do you have to print them out? No, but I do want you to start the work process on it, on another sheet of paper, and then just transfer your work when you get it. But this is still going to be due when?
Thursday.
No, Tuesday. All right, so